Yo, what's up? Now, today we are going to be talking about this pair right here. This, my friends, is the ZiiGaat Lush. And as the name implies, it is really a very lush pair. Let's talk about it. Now, at this point, when we're talking about things under a $300 price range, there's going to be a lot of competitive stuff, and there's going to be a lot of things that stand out on its own, like the recent Q-Ear septet that I reviewed. This one right here in particular is under the $200 price bracket, but still, as it is, it also stands out on its own quite well. But before we get into that, as always, a very quick unboxing. You will be getting a box with this particular sleeve right here. This is the ZiiGaat Lush, letting you know that it is a 1DD4BA set with also this at the back. Opening this up, I like the simplicity recently of all these new sets in 2025, because once you open it up, you are being presented with the head shells itself and nothing else. Opening this up, you will literally just find a very simple ZiiGaat case like this. No extra fluff, nothing. Inside it will house the cable as well as a set of tips. That is it. I think at this point, when you're finding IEMs at this price bracket, you are probably people that have already owned a few IEMs prior. So, you tend to not really care that much about packaging, is what I'm realizing, at least for me. But overall, presentation is quite good. Going on to the build, this thing overall, of course, is made of a fully resin material. And on the faceplate side, you will be getting a very nice, glittery, faceted, I would say slightly silver-ish glittery type of design, which, it's very lush. Other than that, on the body, you could also see there is a very big but quite nicely designed vent hole for the back chamber with silver grills, as well as a silver metal nozzle. There's that. Cable, I would say for the price, would definitely be, decent. I wish there could be something more to be done with that. But at the same time, I feel like, they probably budgeted very well to not over spend on the cable. And in terms of fit, this thing overall fits quite well. I've listened to this for, I would say, close to probably 15 hours for the past 2 weeks. And, yeah, it's very good. And with all that being said, let's just talk about the sound right now. So this thing overall, I would say, is more along the lines of a mild V shape with warm tonalities. And I would say it would have a slight form of boosted sub bass. And for this one specifically, the key word for this whole pair is literally in its name, lush. This thing is basically a warm set with very relaxed presentation. So if you want something to relax to, this pair is to go. Now, starting off with the bass, the sub part is overall quite amplified. I would say it has good rumble when it needs to, and also the resolution is quite, why did I have a voice crack? And the resolution is reflected by the price point. And I would say one more thing is that it has quite good diffusal on the low end. Everything is quite well dispersed. Lower bass and mid bass, I would say overall, are leaning towards a more natural sound. And I would say the amount of punchiness that it has is quite adequate as well. 808s in general, I would say, is leaning towards a more brighter and a more texturally aware type of 808, if you get what I mean. Like, you could listen to the 808s and you could basically feel the texture. The textures are tactile, if it makes any sense. And specifically, very specifically, if you're listening to things with piano tracks, the low notes will definitely have some very nice overtones to it. Now, if you're anything below C3, you can definitely hear some form of, like, very mild overtones on the low end. Going on with the vocals, definitely, like I said, because this thing is a warm pair, it will overall have a more warm tonality on both male and female vocals. And in terms of the positioning, I would say it is barely at the point I will say it is recessed. Male and female vocals in general are also quite well in terms of body, but I would say female vocals definitely have a little bit more of a thickness to it. And with that thickness, overall the weight kind of carries it down slightly. But for male vocals, having slightly less body is in exchange with a more energetic presentation from what I could hear. Instruments overall are quite musical, quite clear, quite natural, but also at the same time being presented in a very laid-back manner. When you're listening to some songs like, let's say, Quedeca's Godstain, that latest single by him, the album's already out, but basically his whole album, anything with woodwinds, have very good extension with a natural type of decay, which I enjoy a lot on this pair. Pianos overall sound quite intentional with all of its presentation, with all the velocities being felt. And synths overall, if you're leaning towards a more digital type of sound, it will definitely sound more technical and it will sound more assertive because it is, having more, I would say, details overall. Upper mids and treble overall are on the slightly dryish side, but I would say it's good for the sake of, having a little bit more technicalities and some energeticness and some details on top. So even though I say this thing is quite warm, it is still having some good amounts of technicalities with some slight sacrifices. I wouldn't say sacrifice, but just some slight alterations on the high end, on the mids and up. And personally, even though there is some dryness, every single thing ends with a more smoothened out profile, so it's all good. Percussions overall also have a very nice lively feeling that gives you sort of a very acoustic type of experience, that type of acoustic energy, that type of live energy. And I would say treble extension is quite realistic for what it is giving. It is not extrapolated to the point where people will usually describe airiness. This thing gives you a mediocre amount of airiness because it is not trying to overdo it. It's just giving you some realistic expectations, which I personally think it's quite a good call, considering this thing is a more relaxed pair. You wouldn't want things to sound airy and warm at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. And overall, the micro details that live along the spectrum, all those piano overtones, all those triangle clinks, all of those guitar shreds, they're all having some slight dry-ish presentations initially, with a nice smoothened out finish. Going down to the technicalities, dynamics, honestly, I really don't have any complaints. This thing is overall quite consistent throughout its whole performance. So it's giving you an extremely enjoyable musical experience without any sacrifices. So no complaints. Soundstage, I would say, for this price is quite good in terms of the XYZ. Everything is quite good, with the fact that it has even better imaging and separation. I would say the accuracy of this, for some reason, even though it is a laid-back pair, usually we will not associate this level of technicalities for a laid-back pair. I will go so far as to say that this thing is winning it even more slightly than a Kiwi Ear Septet. Because like I said, the Septet overall is very technical and musical at the same time. This thing definitely overall in general is lacking in some ways that this thing could do. But in this particular region of technical prowess, I would say the imaging and separation is definitely better than this ever so slightly. And last but not least, detail retrieval. The Lush overall is still very good in terms of its presentations. All the micro details and the nuances are emphasized in quite a subtle way, but it is not overwhelming. It is not in your face. So you could say it is giving you just enough, but not too much, where, the laid back tuning kind of starts to contradict itself. So with that out of the way, with everything settled, what are my final thoughts on the ZiiGaat Lush? For people who already have something along the lines of the Septet, for people who has a more technical and analytical pair that just want something to vibe with, this thing I would say is a very good middle ground. Although this pair is warm throughout, I would say this pair still has, a lot of the characteristics that you get from a technical pair. So for people who are watching this, I would say, if you had a chance or if you are capable, give this a try, give this a purchase. You will definitely not regret it. It is quite a nice addition to your collection as a different type of tuning. Warm, but I would say, enjoyable with enough subtleness of technicalities without calling it being too analytical at all. With that being said, thank you for watching this video. More to come. Stay safe. Why did I say stay safe? I don't know. But yeah, take care, guys. Have a good day.